Our story begins on Naboo as Jedi Padawan Obi Wan Kenobi just watched his master, Qui Gon Jinn, be stabbed in the gut by this Zabrak warrior that just had to be a Sith. Maul let Qui Gon fall to the floor, and then spun to see Obi Wan stuck behind a ray shield, screaming out in agony over his fallen master. Obi Wan felt strong, genuine anger for one of the first times in his life as he stared down at this Sith warrior. He wanted to kill him, to get revenge. But as Obi-Wan looked from Maul, then to the body of Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan shook his head and he closed his eyes. This was not the Jedi way. Even with Qui-Gon down, he would not let this Sith have power over him. The dark side gives one power, but it takes everything else away. It takes real strength to stay in the light. So instead, Obi-Wan knelt down and felt into the Force. He felt Qui-Gon, and he was at peace with his life. This would give Obi-Wan a sense of calm, and he reached his focus over to Maul, who was slashing his lightsaber against the ray shield again and again. Obi-Wan felt his anger, his fear, his hatred, his agony. For Darth Maul, he truly couldn't believe what he was seeing. He just gutted Qui-Gon in front of his Padawan, and yet the Padawan was kneeling, and Maul felt only the light side around Kenobi. Maul honestly didn't know how this was possible. How did he not use his anger? Obi-Wan opened his eyes and looked to Maul with a sad expression. He could not explicitly see everything Maul went through in his life, but Obi-Wan could feel that Maul was not always this way. He grew up trying to love and protect his brothers, only to be tortured and given to the Sith, where his true hatred and anger were exposed and used as a weapon. Obi-Wan slowly stood up now, approaching the ray shield, and he simply told Maul he was sorry for everything that has happened to him. He told Maul that his life has been unfair to him, but it's not too late to choose a different path. Maul bared his teeth at Obi-Wan, and for the first time, he spoke. A whisper quickly turned into a yell, as Maul yelled that the Jedi never came for him. For years, he waited on Dathomir, knowing that he held all the powers of a Jedi, and yet no one ever came. Obi-Wan again apologized, but he told Maul that the Jedi would have loved to have him. But the Dathomirian leaders do not welcome the Jedi. They have a very different view of the Force, and for the first time in his life, Maul saw that it was not the Jedi that refused to take him in, but rather Mother Talzin and Sidious, who hid him from the Jedi. The ray shields opened, but it was like there was still a barrier between the two of them. Maul held his double-bladed saber, and Obi-Wan could see his face twitching like he was fighting a battle within his own mind. For the first time really in his entire life, Maul was being shown genuine compassion and warmth. He growled at Obi-Wan to fight him, but Obi-Wan only shook his head, dropping his saber to the ground, telling Maul there is no need to fight. It was clear to Obi-Wan that no one ever tried to treat Maul as a person rather than a weapon or some savage warrior, so Obi-Wan held out his hand and he asked Maul to join him. But Maul shook his head, telling Kenobi that he can't. His master will find him and destroy him, also saying that the Jedi are weak, complicit in the downfall of the Republic. Obi-Wan slowly nodded, saying perhaps this is true. Perhaps the Jedi Order is overdue for some change. And maybe that change can begin here and now with Maul. The Sith apprentice looked down to his red blade. Decades of pain and suffering radiated from it, and for the first time in his life, Maul decided to do what he wanted to do. Not his brothers, not Mother Talzin, not Sidious. This was him taking control of his own life. Maul deactivated the lightsaber and took Kenobi's hand. Obi-Wan breathed a sigh of relief and guided him over to Qui-Gon's body. Qui-Gon wasn't sure if he was having some crazy vision before death, because the Sith that just stabbed him now knelt down in front of him with Obi-Wan. His yellow eyes had turned blue, and Obi-Wan asked Maul to let go of the darkness, feel the light around him. Maul closed his eyes, and for the first time he searched for the light side of the Force. When he finally found it, Maul found peace, serenity. He saw the plains and the waterfalls of Naboo, flowers growing, birds chirping. He saw peace. And when he opened his eyes, Obi-Wan guided Maul's hand to Qui-Gon's wound. Obi-Wan told Maul to use this light side feeling, focus it on giving it to Qui-Gon. Alone, Obi-Wan would not have been able to save Qui-Gon, but with the help of Maul, the two of them poured their life energy into the wound, and Qui-Gon gasped as the wound began to close up and heal. Obi-Wan and Maul would let the wound heal, then fall backwards, breathing heavily. All three of them were alive, and Maul looked upon Qui-Gon in a new way. Instead of taking his life, he saved his life, and it felt good. Qui-Gon smiled at Obi-Wan and Maul, He was extremely proud of Obi-Wan, and together, Obi-Wan and Maul put Qui-Gon's arms over their shoulders as they walked out of this room together, retracing the steps of their battle, as Qui-Gon was trying to get Maul to reveal more information about himself and the Sith. Maul was hesitant to reveal anything. He still wasn't exactly sure that he was making the right choice. He had so much fear for Sidious, but somehow the hope from the Jedi was overtaking this fear. It was a feeling Maul never had before, but it was intoxicating in the best way. And now, all the way across the galaxy on Coruscant, Darth Sidious felt what he thought had to be the death of Darth Maul. The dark feeling of Maul and the Force basically vanished, and Sidious hoped that Maul killed at least one of the Jedi before his failure. This was extremely disappointing, but Sidious knew he had a different apprentice, eagerly waiting to become a Sith in Dooku. With any luck, Qui-Gon will have died on Naboo, furthering Dooku's descent into darkness. Maul was a useful tool, but it was time for the Sith to rise through the political ways, and Dooku was perfect for that role. On Naboo, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Maul would find the young Anakin Skywalker landing in the hangar with the other Naboo pilots as they celebrated Anakin destroying the droid ship, and all of them hesitantly looked to Maul. Qui-Gon waved a hand to assure everyone that he was with them, and they eventually would board a Coruscant ship sent to Naboo to bring them home to Coruscant, as Anakin would say goodbye to Padme for now. They would have stayed for the Naboo celebration, but Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan needed to get Maul to Coruscant to help unravel the mystery of the Sith. On the trip through hyperspace, Maul went back to being very quiet, even though it was just him, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Anakin. Maul no longer carried the menacing look of the Sith on his face, but instead, he looked to be extremely stressed out, exhausted, and unsure. Qui-Gon went up to Maul alone, asked him what it is that he fears, and Maul told Qui-Gon that he is far weaker than the real Sith Master, and he is worried that him joining the Jedi could get many of Qui-Gon's friends killed. Qui-Gon would tell Maul that by him joining the Jedi, he is far stronger than Sidious could ever hope to be. That was the Sith name that Maul was using, and Qui-Gon was still astounded at how quickly Maul's shift to the light side really went down, but he went with it and tried to ask Maul where the Master was hiding. Maul finally told Qui-Gon that he resides on Coruscant, deep in the industrial sector. He can guide the Jedi there. Qui-Gon thanked him, then took the conversation away from the Sith, telling Maul all about being a Jedi. When they finally arrived at the temple, Maul was wearing a Jedi robe over his head, just in case Sidious or any of his spies were watching, and they would move inside the temple. Nearly every Jedi here looked to Maul with curiosity. No one had ever seen him before, and there were still echoes of the dark side radiating off of him. As the group reached the elevator to the council chambers, Qui-Gon couldn't help but crack a small smile. The council was already tired of him for bringing a 9-year-old boy to the temple. Just wait until they see that he has a Sith this time. The council was indeed taken aback by this. Their doubts of the return of the Sith were soon resolved as Maul stood in the center with Jin and Kenobi, telling the council about his experiences with Sidious. Maul described his childhood, how he was always around his brothers, until one day Darth Sidious showed up and essentially tortured Maul until he let out the dark side and became Sidious's servant. For years, all Maul knew was hatred and revenge, until Obi-Wan Kenobi showed him a different path. Obi-Wan smiled to his new friend Maul, but the council was still wary. Ki-Adi-Mundi said this could be a trap. How can the council be sure that Maul is telling the truth? How can they be sure he's on their side? And so Maul slowly grabbed his lightsaber, asking everyone to trust him. The council members watched with awe as Maul ignited his 2 blades, and they were a purified white, rather than the blood red that the Jedi saw on Naboo. Maul opened himself to the Force, allowing the Jedi to feel that he truly has let go of most of the darkness. There was a seed that would always be there, but that could be said for almost any Jedi in the Order. But he also had a piece of vital information that he would only reveal if he was truly turning away from the Sith. Darth Sidious is new Chancellor Palpatine, and this would spring the Jedi into action. Maul offered to take the Jedi to Sidious's lair. As the longer Sidious lived, the more Maul would feel his fears grow. The Jedi would accept this offer. Half of the council would go, along with Qui-Gon and Maul, while the other half stays here, in case this is somehow part of Sidious's plan. Yoda, Windu, Sazitin, Agen Kolar, Plo Koon, Depa Billaba, Qui-Gon, and Maul would go in 2 separate ships to the location given to them by Maul, and as they approached the lair, Yoda sensed something strange, yet familiar. He turned to the Jedi with surprise, telling them that he senses Dooku is here. Qui-Gon was saddened by this, but not exactly surprised. He imagined that Palpatine promised Dooku a new age for the Republic, and Dooku would go for that without a doubt. And so as the two ships rose up to the hangar door, the 6 council members ignited their blades, jumping out into the hangar. Windu told Qui-Gon and Maul to wait here. They can't risk Sidious using Maul against them. Maul hated this. He wanted the Jedi to trust him, but Qui-Gon helped to keep Maul calm as they waited together inside the ship. In the old building, Dooku and Sidious would turn to see the 6 Jedi ignite their lightsabers, asking them to surrender in the name of the Galactic Senate of the Republic. Sidious immediately knew his plans were ruined. Somehow, the Jedi found him. He wondered if Dooku betrayed him, but there was no time to ask. He used the Force to blast Dooku hard with lightning. He could not trust Dooku in this moment, and then he turned to face the Jedi, telling them they should not have come here, because now he must kill them all. The Jedi started approaching Sidious, when suddenly Ki-Adi-Mundi gasped and fell dead on the floor. Sidious had a second blade hidden along the walls, and he just pulled it through Mundi. Sidious now stood strong with 2 blades, and he spun through the air with insane speed, cutting through Saesee Tiin and Agen Kolar, before moving like a shadow over to Plo Koon. Plo managed to deflect a strike, and Yoda pushed Sidious away with the Force. Sidious smiled, bringing the ceiling down before disappearing from sight. The 4 remaining Jedi looked around, then contacted Qui-Gon to warn him. Upon hearing this, Maul said he knew where Sidious was going, then asked Qui-Gon to trust him. Qui-Gon nodded, and Maul flew their ship down to the ground before having Qui-Gon follow him into a secret entrance to the underground tunnel system. A speeder bike was sitting here, the speeder that Palpatine uses to get from his office to this lair, and Maul cut the engines apart as he and Qui-Gon hid behind a pillar, waiting. Before long, Sidious reached this area, and he tried to start the speeder, but it was broken down, and from the pillar came Qui-Gon and Maul, igniting their green and white blades. Sidious was genuinely shocked by this. His apprentice that he spent years crafting to be a weapon of the Sith has joined the Jedi. Sidious simply asked why, and Maul said that the darkness is unnatural and cruel. He sees that now, and he knows he must destroy the darkness that remains, pointing his white blade at Sidious. Qui-Gon would get behind Sidious, and together he and Maul attacked, running in at the Sith Lord. Maul stabbed forward into the ground, missing Sidious and blocking a strike with the other side of his blade, as Qui-Gon now swung for the Sith Lord. Sidious was using both blades to hold the enemies back, laughing as he did so before kicking Qui-Gon in the face, blocking a new strike from behind from Maul. The 3 of them moved through the tunnels, lightsabers clashing hard against each other, slicing into the wall again and again. Sidious was spinning through the air, trying to wear down his opponents until he managed to slice Qui-Gon's lightsaber in half, blasting him hard with lightning. Sidious went in for a stab, but Maul called upon his power to blast Sidious hard into the wall with a forced push. Sidious had the wind knocked out of him, and Maul propelled himself off of the opposite wall, driving at Sidious, jamming his horns into Sidious's chest. The Sith Lord gasped, falling to the floor as Maul raised his blades for the kill, and Sidious said this was good. Part of Sidious wanted Maul to strike him down and be the heir to his power as the Sith. But Qui-Gon called out to Maul to not use his hatred, and Maul swung down, cutting only the hands off of Sidious. Through heavy, labored breaths, Sidious angrily told Maul that he was weak, but Maul said he was done letting Sidious control his life. He was not a Sith any longer, and he would not strike down Sidious in anger. Yoda, Windu, Depa Billaba, and Plo Koon finally found Qui-Gon and Maul, and they watched Maul put away his saber as Sidious was defeated on the ground. He would be placed in forced restraints, taken back to the temple, where he would be tried and convicted of treason. Dooku would speak to Yoda and Qui-Gon, and they would convince him to testify against Palpatine. And in the end, Palpatine was placed in a vault alone, surrounded by Ysalamir, so he could not use the Force. Dooku would still leave the Republic, but instead of trying to start a war, Dooku would retire, invest in a possible separatist movement that was peaceful. Inside the Jedi Temple, Maul would officially be welcomed in as a reforming Jedi. He would feel truly welcomed for the first time. There was a part of him tugging at the back of his mind, warning him that he failed by not killing Sidious, but it would be a thought that Maul would work on heavily getting rid of. He was proud of himself for not giving in to hate, and he would become extremely close with Obi Wan Kenobi, the Jedi that saved him. Obi Wan would take Maul on some of his first missions as a Jedi Knight, separate from Qui-Gon, to help bring peace to planets in need of help. Maul learned to enjoy these boring, mundane missions, as he was with people who genuinely cared about him, like Obi Wan. Obi Wan really did enjoy Maul's peaceful company as well. Qui-Gon Jinn would immediately take on a new Padawan in Anakin Skywalker, and he would be like the father Anakin never had. Anakin struggled a lot at letting go of his mother, and would often find himself sleeping in Qui-Gon's quarters, just to relieve some stress and to not be alone. But Qui-Gon would help Anakin, and sometimes the two of them would sneak off to Tatooine to visit Shmi, soon learning she was freed and married into the Lars family. This made Anakin extremely happy. She would encourage Anakin to keep going on his Jedi training. And as Maul was getting integrated into the Order, his worst moments were always at night. As he would try to sleep, Maul would often hear whispers of the dark side calling to him, and even though he ignored them, they just never went away. So Maul would instead sometimes sneak off to the training centers in the Jedi Temple, and he would pour any feelings of darkness into training. And on one of these nights, Jedi Master Plo Koon would watch as Maul easily defeated the hardest level of training droids. So Plo would walk down, and he ignited his blue blade on a training setting, asking Maul if he can join him. Maul would accept, and the two of them would train together for hours, as Plo would take tiny moments between strikes to ask Maul about his past, getting Maul to finally dive deep into the past and accept it as part of his life. Plo managed to get Maul to do this in order for him to know that his past does not define him, and after hours of dueling and learning, Plo would give Maul an offer. Although he's already 22, Plo wanted to guide Maul down his path to becoming a true Jedi, sort of like a Master and Padawan, but for a much shorter time. Maul would accept this, and together he and Plo would make an excellent relationship as Maul worked to become a true Jedi. For years, the Jedi Order would see itself begin to truly rise again, as Anakin Skywalker was happily trained by Qui-Gon. Obi-Wan would eventually take on Padawan Ahsoka Tano, and Maul became a true Jedi Knight, as they rose up together to continue protecting the Republic and its people. As the Jedi Order and Republic would work together after seeing a Sith rise to power, it was a new age, and the threats of the Sith seemed to be put to bed for good. And folks, that is our story for today. I really wanted to do one like this. I don't think I've done one where Maul is saved after turning evil. I've done one where he trains as a Jedi basically from birth, but this one I thought was a really intriguing path of what if he switches after stabbing Qui-Gon. For Obi-Wan, it's a moment of kind of desperation, where he's feeling the dark side after Qui-Gon gets basically cut down, and he makes a choice not to give in to the dark side, and instead to try and use his training from Qui-Gon for good. You know, in possibly Qui-Gon's last moments, Obi-Wan switches and decides to not use his anger and hatred, and instead works with Maul. And Maul is someone that never ever received any sort of compassion or light side treatment in his entire life, at least, you know, from age 8 or 10 on when he was captured by, or given to Sidious. So I really think that if the Jedi just reached out to him before Maul was cut down in the hole, that there's a chance he could definitely be saved. Maybe it was a little bit escalated in this video, but that's just the way I wanted to approach it, and he ultimately defeats Sidious, not as a Sith, but as a light side Jedi. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it's a bit shorter than usual. I am currently out of town, and I just wanted to really get this one done. I enjoyed this one quite a lot. It was a fun path to take with Obi-Wan and Maul becoming friends, so hope you enjoyed. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.